In this video, I'm just going to share some of the alternatives that I found that I can recommend if you want to cut down on your Adobe bill and if you want to get back to actually owning the software you use. Hello, I'm Shane Milach from activegrowth.com, and this video is a bit of a rework thing. I don't usually talk about this kind of thing on this channel, but since this is work I've done anyway, I just wanted to share this because, well, I'll do the rant about Adobe and prices afterwards. Probably you're interested mostly in the alternatives right away. And I'll start with what is closest to my own heart and my own workflow, which is video production. So for video production, typically you would be using Premiere Pro and probably Audition from Adobe, and in many cases also After Effects. And there is a really powerful alternative to this, to all three of these, which is DaVinci Resolve. So DaVinci Resolve by Blackmagic Design is an entire editing suite. It started off as a color grading suite, still super powerful for color grading. So in one application, it can competently replace Premiere, After Effects, and Audition. And it's really an incredible tool. And what's more incredible is that you can get about 95% of it for free. So there's a free edition and a studio edition. And the studio edition adds some features, but you can do almost everything this thing does for free. Having said that, I'm not only going to recommend free software here. Personally, I like paying for good software. I just like owning the software I pay for instead of being tied into a weird subscription plan that keeps getting more expensive. So this is not necessarily a list of just free tools. And so if you do want to edit projects, video projects on a team, for example, I would absolutely recommend getting DaVinci Resolve Studio, which also only costs $300 at the time of this recording. Now, I already mentioned Adobe Audition as an audio editing tool. Is actually one of my favorite tools in the Adobe stack. It's just really useful for things like noise removal. And like I said, in Resolve, there is an audio suite that is really powerful as well. Also worth looking at are Audacity, which is free and quite powerful. And there's also a tool called Cakewalk, which, similar to DaVinci Resolve, is a pretty professional level suite of audio tools that you can currently get for free. Next up, we have another trifecta of tools that can be replaced. We have basically all of your graphical tools. So we've got Photoshop, we've got Illustrator, and we've got InDesign. And those can be replaced not with an all-in-one tool, but with tools from Affinity. So you can get Affinity Photo as a replacement for Photoshop, Affinity Designer as a replacement for Illustrator, and Affinity Publisher as a replacement for InDesign. And these are tools that you can buy at a very reasonable one-time cost, and they're super powerful tools. I would say that in many ways they are on par with the Adobe tools that they replace. The only problem that I found is that just if you're used to working in Photoshop, for example, it does take quite a bit of getting used to a new interface, new keyboard shortcuts, and so on. But in terms of the tool itself, these are definitely worth looking at. Another tool that I actually don't like very much in the Adobe suite is Lightroom, if you do any raw photo editing. And there are many alternatives there. Some that I can recommend are Capture One on the higher end, and Luminar, Skylum Luminar, which is kind of a simpler, more focused on quickly applying nice effects to pictures, and On One, which is another one-time price, more reasonably priced alternative, where you can, like I said, basically own the software at a reasonable one-time price instead of being tied into a subscription. And then finally, another use case that I've come across and that I've personally used is basically application design and UI design. Now, personally, I've never used Adobe XD, but I have tried the alternatives, and the leading alternative there is Sketch, unfortunately only for the Apple ecosystem. A good alternative that is cross-device or cross-OS compatible is Figma, and that's also worth looking at. So that is just a quick list of the kind of recommendations of things that I've tried out, that I've come across, that I think in many cases make better alternatives to the Adobe software. And one of the reasons I did decide to publish this video is because I found myself in this position where, for me, we do have various designers and creatives working in the company, and we do pay the Adobe bill kind of reluctantly. It does seem like too much money for what we're getting. But I'm in the fortunate position where this is just like one business expense among many business expenses. It doesn't really make a big difference. But the problem I have is that when I talk to a startup entrepreneur, when I talk to someone who is basically where I was maybe 10 years ago in my entrepreneurial journey, I can't tell them, oh yeah, I recommend you do this. I can't tell them, yeah, just, buy the entire Adobe CC subscription, because it's just not a good investment of limited capital. And also because of the way stuff is split up onto different apps, theoretically, yes, you can get a single app for something like $20 a month, which seems reasonable enough. But realistically, almost nobody uses just one app, right? Most people will be using, for example, not just Premiere, they'll also be using After Effects and Audition. And at that point, you're paying $600 or more for that, and you don't even own the software. So this is one of the reasons I wanted to make this video, is because even though on our team, we are still Adobe users, I have to say, like, this cost, if I was starting out, I would definitely avoid this cost. And also if I was starting from scratch, I would probably just never get into the Adobe ecosystem to begin with. So I hope you found this useful. And if there are other Adobe alternatives that you enjoy and that you can recommend, go ahead and leave a comment below.